One of the things I've noticed in life is that people often like to say these words, all you have to do. Whenever people say all you have to do, in my experience, usually it means it is not going to be as simple as what they're saying. The reason is all you have to do is easy for the person saying it, because you are the point of it. All you have to do is, and then when I get in the middle of it, I'm like, hey, all you have to do is that. And then when I'm doing it, it's like there's 800 steps and there's 14 things that break and I never have what I need. All you have to do is frustrating to me. Not frustrating to say, frustrating to do. I think life looks that way sometimes. How complicated could life be? You were born, you live, you die. Finished. How hard could that be? How complex could that ever get? You know what? If you're a child, all you have to do is wake up, eat and sleep, poop, go back to bed at the end of the day. All you have to do. If you're an adult, all you have to do is get up, do a few things, go to work, come home, do a few more things, go to bed, get up and do it again. That's all you have to do. Does it play out that way for you? It doesn't for anybody. Normally when people say things like that, you just want to punch them a little bit or maybe a lot. For a few years of my life, I went down to Florida every year and would speak at youth camps, especially down around Panama City Beach area. Most of the time we went, we would take our groups, or they would take their groups, and we would take them to this place. It's called the Grand Maze. And we'd drop off, I don't know if this was an experiment like gerbils and hamsters kind of thing, or if it was punishment, but we'd drop them off in this, and you start out, and the goal is to find your way through the maze to each of these quadrants, and it's harder than it looks. And when you get there, you check in, the goal is to get done the fastest, and that's what it was. And you do it, and you've got all of these hundreds of people running around. By the way, we usually went toward the end of summer, and in that part of Florida toward the end of summer, it's somewhere between 110 and 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. When you put that also in the middle of a fenced-in area where there's almost no air blowing, it is about the same as the surface of the sun. And so usually when you're through, however long it took, you're just so glad to be finished, and you've paid money and now you've done that, and you say, good, I won't do that again at least for another year. But every time we did it, all the students would be out, and then you would start counting, because evidently you're supposed to leave with the same amount you came with, and it would be, oh, there's 2 missing. Who's missing? Let's see. Who is it? Has anybody seen them? And then eventually, you know what you would do? Somebody would have to go back in and climb their way up to one of these towers, and from that tower you can see where everybody else is, and it would be, hello, little lost student over there, and hey, let me help you get out of there. I can't find my way, and it's so hot, and I hate this. This is the stupidest idea ever. I don't want to do this stupid idea. And you'd be, all right, just listen, do what I say. Turn left. No, the other left. No, the other, and now you know why they're lost in the maze. Yeah, that way. Now go, now turn, and finally you get them out, and they come out, and they go, never, ever, 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 ever again will I do that. Here's what I learned from that, and I'm kind of a slow study. I learned it is a lot easier to do life from up here than it is down there. When you can see where the walls are and where the openings are, it is so much easier to navigate. Well, we're in a series called Faith. Not just faith, it's faith in real life, not just a concept, not just a belief system, but faith in real life. And it's been based on a study from the book of James in the Bible. The very back end of the Bible is where you find it. James, for our last 4 weeks we've been looking at, and he gives us just this wisdom as a guy who's kind of standing up in the loft saying, let me help you out. I want to give you really practical ways you can live your life. Today we finished that series up in chapter 5, and chapter 5 is like just this list of random bullet points of how to live out our faith, especially in difficult times. And it's James just saying, let me help you out. I'm not wanting to frustrate you, but let me just tell you, as soon as we start, he does. Check out these words. We'll start in verse 7. He says, dear brothers and sisters, be patient as you wait. Let's just stop right there, because that's ridiculous. First, he uses two words that almost all of us hate, be patient. You may tell you the worst thing you can tell somebody who's impatient? Yeah, to be patient. That makes people want to annihilate you. People hate those words. The only thing worse than being patient is being patient in a scenario where you have to wait. Be patient as you wait. That's oxymoronic. That is just moronic. Nobody feels good about that. So that's where he starts us out. So yay, aren't you glad you're watching today? So here's his words to you. Hey, be patient as you wait. And then he begins to explain for the Lord's return. He's saying, listen, in the middle of this maze of life you've got, don't lose it. Don't lose it. And he's not just saying be patient like, twiddle your thumbs, or he's trying to give us an active way to be patient. Maybe to be focused. Maybe to be aware. Be patient because this life is going to end and there's something that needs to be accomplished before the end. And he begins to explain. He says, consider the farmers who patiently wait for the rains in the fall and the spring. They eagerly look for the valuable harvest to ripen. You too must be patient and take courage, for the coming of the Lord is near. He's just saying, in case you don't understand this, I'm trying to be practical. It's in real life. He says, you're like a farmer. They plant the seed, but you can't just plant it and go, grow! Grow now! Grow fast! It is a process. And if you're a good farmer, that when you plant it, there's some winds that need to blow, and there's some rains that need to fall. There's sun that needs to shine. There's all that to make it grow. And a good farmer has to be patient because he knows there's things coming their way. And those things may not make life easier. A lot of rain doesn't make it easier for a farmer. Matter of fact, it makes it more difficult. But without rain, there's no harvest. And he's just saying, in your life, you have been planted on this earth. You've been put in this maze. And I want you to be aware of what's going on, because if you'll be aware, in the end, there's a valuable harvest. God put you here for a reason. And he's going to do something significant with your life. And it's not just to get you through life. It's that he wants your life to have a significance that you can't find any other way. So be patient. If you don't like that, be aware. Be aware of what's going on around you. That's an important piece. And here's the lesson he's trying to teach, is that life is seasonal. Life is not birth to death, that all through life there are different seasons. Like this is our first weekend of the spring. It's seasonal. Well, so is life. Your life is seasonal. You've been through some seasons. I don't care how old you are. I don't care what your experience has been like. You've already been through some seasons, and you're in a season of life right now. If I were to ask you, what season of life are you in? If you don't know the answer, then today will be really helpful. It's really helpful for me to be able to get my arms around this. By the way, Jesus had seasonal life. In his life, when he was a little kid, we get this first example past Christmas story of Jesus going to the temple and his parents leaving and looking around, and they're like, does anybody see Jesus? Nope. Where is he? They finally find him, go back, grab him by the ear. Well, I told you to always stay. They're doing that number, And he looks at him and he said, didn't you know I had to be about my Father's business? He's kind of saying, this season of my life is about learning. I went to the place to learn. This season of my life is about soaking in. I was in the place where I would do that. Didn't mean it disrespectfully. He's just saying that's the season I'm in. After he starts telling everybody who he is as an adult, he's 30 years old. People start following him. And as he does, at first, people get more and more on board. They hear his story. They're moved by what he says, and they start following him. And they get so excited. And the people who are closest to him start getting kind of big head. They have enlarged cranium disease, ECD. And as they do, they begin to start saying, you know what, I'm going to be the greatest. I'm going to be the most important. I'm going to sit at the best place. And Jesus gives them this little lesson. In this season of their life, where everything was moving to the right and up, everything was expanding, everything was growing, everything was great, he said, listen, it's important to understand that my economy is different. In my economy, the servant of all is the most important, not the one in charge. It's not the head of the table, it's the one over here. If you know what that means in our world, the people who say, I'm the most important in Jesus' economy, say, you're the least. He who loves the least will be the greatest. That's the way he works. He was teaching them in this season, here's the lesson you need to learn. While it seems like we're winning, you have to be careful because right now it will destroy you. Later on, Jesus had some really hard messages, and one time he talked about that following me will cost you something. And when he did, a lot of the people just left. And his disciples were like, don't say that anymore. That's a horrible recruiting message. And he was like, it's the truth, and people need to know the truth. He said, as a matter of fact, broad is a way that leads to destruction. A lot of people get on that path. But the path of following me, narrow is the way that leads to life. And he's just saying it's not always easy. And in that season of their life, he's trying to teach them the difference between being popular and being noticed and being a follower of Jesus. There was a difference. It cost something. It paid out in the end because there was a harvest coming. And then toward the end of his life, lots of people follow him again. Then one day he gets arrested, just beat up, crucified, all of that. And everybody who said they loved him vanished, abandoned him. You see the seasons of his life just like there's seasons in your life. The thing to get us going right now is to recognize there are seasons. And then James starts to give us some little hints what to do when you're in a season and some what not to do. The first one he gives, I think this one's interesting, they throw it at the beginning of this run. He says, don't grumble about each other, brothers and sisters, or you'll be judged. He says this, if you're not careful, one of the red flags or yellow flags that you're not living a healthy life is when you live your life looking around grumbling about each other. I'm glad that never happens in our world today, aren't you? Aren't you glad you don't work at a place or hang around with people or whatever? Aren't you glad? One of the things I love about Journey is there's not a lot of this that goes on. Most people who are here have grown beyond that. There's not a lot of complaint. But for all of us, we struggle with this in life. There's people around us. His point is, when you put your focus on the each others that aren't going well, you've lost your focus. They don't deserve, nor should you put your focus there. Every time you're grumbling about somebody else, you have lost sight of a harvest that's to come and how to make life better. It's like saying it smells bad in here while you're pouring bad smelling stuff into the floor. That's ridiculous. Grumbling about the broken parts of other people shows the broken parts of you and me, but we all have a tendency to do it. So he starts out and just says, there's a better way to live. One of the signs that you are not being patient, aware of the season of life you're in, is you're noticing the problem with others more than you're noticing what God could be developing in you. And because here's the reality, we'll throw this in, that God allows people into my life. He allows people into your life for a reason. I'm not saying he wants people to be bad. I'm not saying he wants people to be hurtful. I'm just saying this, the people in your life God will use to develop something in you. That is true. I don't like that. Well, I don't like it either. I didn't write it. Don't yell at me. I'm just saying this is a reality. The truth is, a lot in my life, the best parts of my life have been learned not because I saw a great example, it's because I've seen a bad example. A lot of the things I've tried not to do in my life is from being around people who do them so badly, I go, I'm never going to do that. But let me just say this, God will allow people into your life for a reason. He won't waste that opportunity. And then he just starts to give examples. For example, of patience in suffering. He said, you know about Job. If you've read the Bible, you know this. If you haven't been around church much, Job was a guy who had this incredible life going, and right in the middle of it, wham, he just gets hit with all of these negative things. Health things and family things and financial things. He said, let me just talk to you about him. Here's a guy who went through all this suffering, and you can see, here's the end of the story, you can see how the Lord was kind to him, and this is the most important phrase in the verse, at the end. You can see how the Lord was kind to him at the end, for the Lord was full of tenderness and mercy. If you had asked Job in the middle, could you see God's tenderness and mercy? He would have said, I can't see anything. I'm getting so pelted with this. But because of Job's patience, in the end, Job was something better than he ever was before, and he recognized that God was better than he ever dreamt God was. Because Job didn't lose focus in the middle. He just gives that as an example. That's a guy getting the snot kicked out of him and not liking it. It wasn't like, oh, it's okay. No, it wasn't okay. He was frustrated and hurt. And in the middle of that, though, he never lost sight of this, that God is up to more than I know about. And it gives that as an example. If you're going through suffering, that might be good for you to note. Then he goes on, and he gives these cool little statements. Are any of you suffering hardships? Right after Job, are any of you suffering hardships? And he says this, you can either focus on your hardship, which is almost impossible not to do sometimes. When you're going through difficult things, don't you wake up in the morning and think how difficult your difficult things are? Don't you think of the obstacles that keep you from being past that? Of course you do. He's saying be careful not to get so focused on this. Instead, you should pray. He's saying get your gaze from what's hurting you toward the one that can help you. Over and over, it's important in the season you're in to be able to recognize when there's hardship, pray. Not just say it, oh, God help me. It's taking your attention toward the one who can make your life better. Man, we need that over and over. How often do we need to do that? However often we focus on our hardship more than we're focusing on God. And then he gives the other example. Are any of you happy? Are any of you like, we're killing it, right? This is going great. Are any of you happy? And then he gives this advice, you should sing praises. Not about yourself and not about what's going on, but about God. And he's saying, here's the other end of this, the other side of this coin. When you're suffering, you'll become so focused on your suffering that you lose sight of God. He's saying this, sometimes the scariest part, the most vulnerable time in your life won't be when things are going badly. It may be when things are going well. And he said, in this time, sing praises. In other words, give God the recognition you need. When things go bad, run to God. When things go well, point to God. That's how healthy people live. It's not a, hey, you know what we've been doing. You know why this is happening. The answer is because God is gracious. He is, remember the last verse? He is full of kindness and mercy. And then we move on. Then he changes gears completely. It's like this bullet list, just confess your sins to each other, he said, and pray for each other so that you might be healed. Then he goes to this. Maybe the season of life you're in is a season where you're going through and you've placed yourself in some habits, into some wrongs, into some things that are hurting you. Sin is really prevalent in your life. And he said when you do that, there's going to be a tendency to hide, to move away, to pull away from, to shut the doors, to pull the blinds. Sin incubates in darkness. That's what's going to be your tendency. And he says the opposite of that. He said when that's going on, you need to find people you can trust and you need to be open and honest with them and confess your sins to each other. You need to come clean. And here's the reason. Because there's a tendency when we're sinning to shut down everything. And he says instead open up. You know why? Because light is a great disinfectant. What is in the dark can control us. When we bring it out to the light, it loses its power over us. And we need to do that together. Anybody wanting to sign up for this, let me just confess my sins. I'll confess your sins. I'll sign up for that. I don't want to tell my stuff to somebody. But the truth is, the humility it takes to recognize in front of someone else your own issues is the humility it takes to start moving forward. So instead of shutting down, open up and allow light to begin to disinfect the things in our life. It all makes so much sense. So we can say it this way. Life is seasonal. We have to identify our current season. When we do that, it'll begin to help us understand what is God developing in me. That's the question to ask over and over. When you say, this is my season of life, we ask the question, what is God trying to teach me? What is he developing in me right now? So I thought I would do this really quickly. I'll just hit some seasons of life. None of them may hit you, but it'll hit somebody you know. Maybe it'll get your mind started. There's no greatness to this list. I just started making a list. Maybe you're at a season of your life, we'll call it empty nest season. Now, maybe for you, that means your kids have grown and moved away. It may not. There may be other reasons that it feels like your nest is empty, but what plays out is that something has changed. What used to be is no more. You're feeling that. It may not seem like a big deal if you've never done that, but sometimes a lot of our identity, for some of us, a lot of our identity is in father or mother, and you're no less a father or mother when somebody moves away, but you know what you feel? I feel a lot less needed. I feel a lot less valuable. I feel a lot less responsible every day. And it shakes us a little bit. You can joke about it, you can whatever, but it is a big piece of life. Maybe you're facing, that is your season. And hey, by the way, if that's you, here's the question you need to wake up every day asking God, what are you trying to teach me in this season? What are you trying to build in me this season? What is it that you're trying to develop right now in me? Maybe you're at an empty nest season. I'll keep going. Maybe yours is just the opposite and you would say, I'm at too full of a nest. Maybe it's not complaining. Maybe you've prayed and God has given you kids. And praying doesn't get you the kids, but I didn't want to go to the other way. But maybe you have a house with kids in it and you love them. I'm not doubting that. But maybe you feel like my head is going to explode. It feels like no matter what I do, I am needed for something else. It is more need than I have capacity to fill need. Maybe it's not just kids, or maybe your kids grew up and have come back, or maybe your reality is God's put other people in your close sphere of influence and you just feel overwhelmed by it. You feel like, man, I'd love a little piece of that because right now I don't know how to deal with all that I've got going. My plate is this big and what's on my plate is this big and it is making a mess. Recognize that that's the season you're in. And then here's the question. What do you think God is trying to develop in you right now in this season? You can just say, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do. If that helps you, knock yourself out, but it doesn't. What will help you is when you say, okay, I'm in a season where I feel overwhelmed by all the things around me. What is God trying to teach me? God, what are you trying to grow or develop in me right now? Maybe you have too full a nest. Maybe yours is you're just killing it. It's working. Your career's moving. You prayed for stuff and it's happening just the way you hope. And in the middle of that, we need to understand that is a season. Success is sometimes a season. As a matter of fact, it may be when we're most vulnerable in life. Maybe your successes are coming quickly and you're winning at things, but there's an important reality we need to say to God in this season, what are you trying to teach me? Just like with the disciples, he had a special teaching time during that side so they didn't become so preoccupied with what they were accomplishing that they took their eyes off of him. When you're killing it, if that's your season, hey, my season is killing it. What's God trying to teach me in this? Let's go another one. Maybe senior year, and this is just a placeholder. Maybe it is your senior year in high school or your senior year in college. Maybe we can let senior year just stand for any time when you're about to leap, when you're about to make big transitions. Maybe you're single and about to get married. Maybe, I don't know what it would look like, you're taking a big career jump. Maybe you've just moved here or wherever you are. Maybe you're about to go somewhere else. Whatever this transition time is, it can become so easy to be micro-focused on what I am and where I'm going, that we lose sight that God is up to something in us. And during that season, recognize it and say, God, what are you teaching me in this? What do I need to know right now? When you're about to make your biggest decisions, it is so important. Sometimes we can get so career focused on what's next that we forget to include God in it. And God is the one that before you were born had a plan for your life. And it's not just your job. It is what he wants you to become. It's so important to recognize, let senior year be transition times. Maybe your biggest issue, your season you're in, is that you've got some difficult people, and I put at work, maybe it's not at work, maybe it's somebody in your home, maybe it's somebody in your life, maybe it's your extended family, but you've got really well, you do have difficult people, we know that, but maybe you've got some that are overwhelming to you right now. That they require so much of your energy and your thoughts every day that it is destroying you. Maybe that's the season you're in, like I've never had so much opposition in my life. Recognize that this is my season and ask this question. You can focus on the difficult people, but you know what happens? You become what you focus on. Often when we focus on the difficult people in our life, we become more difficult. We become as broken as they are. That's not the hope, right? So maybe for us it's to say, I'm in a season of difficult people, but God, what are you trying to grow in me and develop in me right now in dealing with these very difficult, very broken people? What are you trying to develop in me? Make sense to you? It's the same question each time. Maybe yours is health and you're just fighting massive health challenges. Maybe you're just completely sick and tired of being sick and tired. Maybe you feel like every time I take one step forward in getting better, I go 3 steps backwards. Maybe they've quit giving you good answers and good hope. Maybe you just hurt. I just hurt. And some of us don't understand this, but if you deal with constant pain, you know exactly what I mean. When you wake up hurting and go to bed hurting, you know what it does to your mind, to your emotions, and to your body. And maybe that's you. You're just going through massive physical pain right now. And if that's you, you can focus on your pain and it'll hurt worse. I'm just saying, hey, I'm not minimizing your pain. I'm not minimizing your health. Please don't understand it that way. I am saying you're going to have to choose where you put your focus. Maybe to say, this is my season right now. I'm going through massive health stuff. God, what could I learn while I'm going through this? So, well, Chris, that doesn't take away my health stuff. No, it doesn't. You still got to get to harvest time, and it may be a minute. I'm not trying to be simplistic because it's not always simple. I'm just saying up here on the perch, this is the truth. Ask God, what could you teach me during this time? Because God will not waste that time in your life. And wouldn't it be better to get on the other side of this better than you were before? If you're going to go through it, wouldn't it make sense to benefit from it somehow? Or maybe you're dealing with loneliness, and I don't know why. Maybe you've been dealing with it for a long time, or maybe it's been thrust on you. Can I just say this? Loneliness doesn't mean being alone sometimes. Sometimes you can be lonely in a room with hundreds of people. Sometimes you can be lonely in a house full of people. Sometimes you can be lonely in a world with 7 billion plus people. Or maybe you are, and maybe you are just alone. That I used to have all this around me and now I don't, and I don't know how to deal with it. And your pain is real and it's overwhelming. And here's the deal. When we're lonely, we often focus on being lonely. Why me? How has it ended up? What do I do? There's nobody. You can focus on that, and it's justified if you do. I'm not shooting at you if you do. I'm just saying it may not help you if you do. But maybe you could say, God, in this time of aloneness, in this time that's different for me, what could you teach me? What do you want to develop in me right now? Because if I'm going through it, I want to benefit from it. I'm almost done with these, I promise. Maybe you're feeling purposelessness. That's a lot of S's in there. You're just feeling, I have a lack of direction. I don't wake up with a lot of drive anymore. I just feel like I'm not even sure what's next. And if that's you, I wish there was an easy answer to that. I've sure felt that way before. I hate that emptiness. It feels like your battery never recharges. I hate that feeling. When you're in the middle of that, you can just focus on what's not working, or you can say, listen, this is the season I'm in. I recognize it. I acknowledge it. I identify it. Now, God, what are you going to teach me during this time? Don't underestimate what God may be doing under the soil to grow something in you, but it will not grow and germinate unless we give it the attention it needs and work with Him. Last one. Maybe you're somebody who would say, I thought I had it all figured out. I knew I was going to do that, and this is the way life was going to play out, and then all of a sudden, it ain't working out that way for me. And if that's you, can I just say, recognize this is my season of not having it figured out anymore. Hey, by the way, you didn't have it figured out before, but when you think you do, it feels better. Nobody has it all figured out, but a lot of us feel like we kind of know the next step. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. We plan our lives, and it's important to do that. We stay open to what God has, but when you reach a point where you go, I don't even know what's next. And if that's you, can I just say, you can focus on what you don't know. And you will, to some degree. Of course you will. But man, it's so important for, our friend James would say from up here on the tower, let me just say, ask this question since life is seasonal. There's my season. Right now is the I don't know season. God, what could you grow in me in these moments where I don't know, where I have to just open my hands up and say, I can't figure it out anymore. That happens to us over and over in life. We have to be able to recognize. And here's the crazy truth in all of it, that God is far more interested in developing my character. He is far more interested in developing your character than He is providing for my comfort. And sometimes while I'm saying, God, fix it, God, make it better, God, make me feel good, God, help, it's kind of mama, God, help, Father God, God, help. And here's the reality, that God wants to help and He wants to comfort. But His number one priority is when He puts you here on this earth is to build significance, not just for this moment in time though. Not planting the seed is not any way cool. There's not like, wow, that was the best day of my life. Because getting the harvest is, and He just understands that this is where harvest comes from. Your character is what He's trying to develop, and He wants your character to outlast your body. He wants you to make a significant impact on this earth, so long after you, you'll be making impact for eternity. He wants you to have significance, and the way He gets there is He focuses on your character. Not saying He doesn't care about your comfort. He just cares about this more than your comfort. And so should I. And so should you. So here's what we'd say, wrap up now. Life is seasonal, and we have to identify our current season. When we do, we have to begin to lean into it. When we recognize in this season of my life, here's what's difficult. Instead of running away, we have to lean into it. When we lean into it, we ask that question. God, what do you want in my life? I'm open. Like a sailboat, when the wind blows, the sailboat doesn't run away. Man, all that wind could really wreck my boat. That's when you put your sails up and you turn them into the wind. We've got to lean into some of that and recognize that I don't have to like everything that's going on, but I will not waste what's going on. I will begin to lean into it so God can do something in me. For me in my life, when I've recognized times when I seem to be overly focused in one area and under-focused in another, when I go, why am I in this spot? One of the things that I've had to say over and over, maybe this will not be your issue, but I tend to get overly involved in any one thing. I like one things at a time. I get excited about the one thing I'm doing. What's right in front of me right now is always the best thing. If I'm talking to you, I'll probably be really absorbed in talking to you. I don't really care about everything else in that moment. For me, work can do that. For me, hobbies can do that. If I do it, I just want to be good at it. I want to win at it. I want to be fully immersed in it. I don't like dabbling. But as a result, it's easy to lose my balance. So a long time ago, I wrote down this statement, and at times I've done really well with it. At times I've really struggled. This is one that I deal with every day. Don't serve leftovers for the main course. It may not make sense to you. I didn't write it down for you. I wrote it down for me. See, I have the tendency sometimes to wake up in the morning and go attack whatever it is my job is and to give everything I've got to it. And then by the time I get home and push that garage door or walk in that door, by the way, that's main course for me. God gave me my family. He gave me my home to build, and that's main course. It's the most important thing in my world. If I failed at everything else and succeeded at that, I'd be a success. If I succeeded in everything else in life and failed at that, I'd be a failure. And I don't get to determine success and failure with that. All I can determine is my role in it, right? Sometimes the people there have to have some input too. But here's what I found for me. Sometimes I can go serve everybody else in the world, whatever you need. Yep, I'm available. I'm available emotionally and physically and mentally. I'll give you time. And then sometimes I'll walk into my own home and you know what? I am so burnt out, spent. I'm just like, just shut up and leave me alone. Let me put my feet up. Let me just vegetate, you know. Sometimes I feel like I serve filet mignon to total strangers and whatever scraps I can throw in the microwave to the people I love most. I hate that about me. Some of you are going, boy, that's me too. And I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm just being honest. For me, one of the things I've had to do is say, in this season of my life, I have to be incredibly careful to make the main things the main things. Even for some of you being here or watching this today, you've set aside time, and it's difficult. Being focused on this for 45 minutes has been a real challenge. And sometimes it's because we get so consumed and we get confused about what's the main course and what's the leftovers. Let me just say this. I don't think we're supposed to serve leftovers at work either. I don't think I'm supposed to go to work and go, yeah, you ain't getting much from me because I've got really important stuff. What it does make me recognize is there's something bigger going on, that there is not enough of me to be great when I get up in the morning and leave for work and all the people I'm going to encounter during the day, and to be great when I get home and offer all the emotional, all the love, all the support, all of the ability to be present in those moments. There's not that much of me. That I charge my battery and by the time I get to a certain point, it is down. That little red bar has popped up. And maybe you feel that too. And if that's you, I want to tell you that bad news, there's not enough of you to do everything that's needed. It's just not enough. That's the bad news. The good news is when we can recognize this need, God has capacity that you may not be experiencing. God has capacity to take just a little picnic basket and feed thousands. He has the ability to stretch. When you give him what you've got first, he can make more out of what you've got because he is enough. For me, the reason I say this is every day when I drive home, I try really hard to do a couple things. I only live 10 minutes from where I'm standing right now. And so when I drive home, I just get out on a main road, go a couple miles, turn right. that takes me back into neighborhoods, and I end up at my house. One of the things I try to do by the time I get off of our main road, the 45 bypass here, I try to turn everything off. I don't do it perfectly, I'm just telling you. But I try to turn my radio off, my phone off, everything off. And for that last few minutes as I make my way home, I try to say to God, God, I am not enough. The most important people on planet Earth are going to be in that place. And I want to show up large for them. I want to care for them. I want to love them well. And I'm not good enough, and I don't have enough. And outside of you helping me, this will not go well. And I'll just tell you this, God has the capacity to renew our spirit, to fill our lungs with air, and He will. But you have to recognize in this season, if I'm not careful, I'll serve leftovers to the most important things in my life. What I want to do is I want to serve the best I have when I walk into work. I want to serve the best I have to my community, and I want to serve the very best I have to my family and the people who are most important to me. And the only way a human being can do that is with God's help. I have to recognize it. I have to give Him what I've got so He can make more from it. I can't do it on my own. My problem is I often think I can. Does that make sense? Let me finish up with this one last thing. If you're not careful, you'll forget what's at stake. Remember, you plant the seed because there's something coming and it's harvest, and there's going to be hungry people someday, and if I don't do this now, there won't be the facility to feed them down the road. Don't forget what's that. You know what was at stake when He was teaching them about the difficulty of following Him and about keeping their perspective and about all of those things? When He was going through disappointment and abandonment, you know what was at stake in all of that? They didn't know. You know, I know. You know why? Because I'm up on the tower now. I'm way after he lived. Easy to armchair quarterback. You know what was at stake? Me. I was at stake. If he didn't follow through with that, the harvest is me. It's you. It's the people we love. It's my forgiveness. Don't forget what's at stake. You know what's at stake with you? When you can find your way through the seasons of life and allow God to grow, you know what's at stake? The people you love most. The people in our community, the people who need Jesus. As a matter of fact, this is how James finished this little chapter and finished this book. He said, brothers and sisters, if someone among you wanders away from the truth and is brought back, you can be sure that whoever brings the sinner back from wandering will save that person from death and bring about forgiveness of many sins. He just said, listen, the reason I'm trying to develop these things in you is this is what's at stake. There's people in the world that you can influence, and only you can influence. You're not God, but you will be part of their path to God. And when you're consumed with all of your stuff and not developing where you should, this is who's at stake, and this is what's at stake. They're not your responsibility, they're God's. They are your opportunity to be a part of God's plan. Matter of fact, in a couple of weeks, we're going to have Easter. One of the big deals for us around Easter is being able to invite and invest in people. And it's just saying, come be a part of something that's helping me. And then we pray and we hope and we wait. And the goal is that God will be introduced to someone who will accept His forgiveness of their sins and offer them brand new life. It's why we do it. If you're watching from far away, get somebody to watch with you. If you're local, bring somebody with you. But it's why we do what we do. Can I just say this? In the middle of your season, don't forget what's at stake. And there's more than you think. And the only way it'll play out the way it should is when you can say, I identify this as my season. I ask God, what are you wanting to develop in me? And I open myself to let Him do His work. Because there's harvest that is coming. And by the way, this little thing that we call life is really just a setup for the life to come. And if God can develop my character in the who I am, I will live for eternity in a whole different way, knowing that I found significance here so that I can live the life He intended forevermore. And that's God's promise. Thanks, James, for the help on that. So God, help us with that today. We ask it in your name. Amen. Have a great week.